lick of the day. So what's going on today is that, so if you didn't know, I teach at a music college in Tokyo, and it's more of a popular music sort of program. It does touch on jazz and other things, but the students are not really well versed in jazz. So in a couple of weeks, we're starting in a jazz week where the students get introduced to jazz. So the teachers asked me if I would put together a video describing the importance of jazz and why it's necessary to study and what kind of music it is. And I was in Japan, I had to do it in Japanese, which is all right. But, I feel a little self-conscious about it because I'm not Japanese. And so when I decided that I would just play like a couple of verses of Autumn Leaves and, a solo, and that would sort of be part of the motivating factor so that they would be, feel excited to learn about jazz, right? So I did that, and I had no intention of turning it into a lesson or anything. But what happened is that I listened to the video, and I thought there's some important points here. And since I just played it very spontaneously, it just sort of came off natural. And I think that's a good point, too. So today I'm taking Autumn Leaves, and we're going to look at it and analyze it. And then I'm going to teach you different ways that you can solo over it. Now, jazz musicians always have some advice. It's got to be this way, it's got to be that way. It's jazz, which means that you're free to do whatever you want to do. So I'm just going to give you a few different approaches and concepts that you can use over a song like Autumn Leaves. And hopefully from that point, if you're not, well-versed in jazz, you can go on to other songs too. Because jazz is a kind of music that we learn through a good repertoire of music. That's how we sort of learn it, right? So, and I put together a PDF. It's about 10 pages with the full analysis, right? The analysis and some, and some licks and things. And so if you need that, go get it. It's $1 for each of these. So it's $5 a month. I usually do one every week. Okay, so we're going to look at the chart, and I'm going to explain what's going on. I think it's going to pop up over there after I edit this video, so let's look at it over there. So when we look at the song, and I did it in C because it makes it easy to analyze. It's generally not in the key of C. Generally like a B flat or, G, I guess. So, whatever. You're going to have to move it around to different keys. But just for the point of analysis, I think that we want to look at it in C. Okay, so when we look at the song, we look at it and we want to look at what the diatonic chords are. So you need to look at that palette, or at least have that palette in your head anytime you look at, a song that you're going to play over. And when we look at it, we see it's in the key of C, and there's 7 chords in the key of C, and this is what they are. C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G7, A minor, B minor 7 flat 5, and then C major, back to the beginning, right? Now, when we look at the song, we see it goes 2, 5, 1, and then 4. So, like this. And then a B minor 7 flat 5 chord pops up. And that's still in the key of C. But, go back to my college days, Dr. Hinkle would call this a pivot chord, because when we use a pivot chord, we're using a chord that is in a different key and allows you to change to that key. It's a way of changing keys, right? Modulating to a different key. So this B minor 7 flat 5 is also the 2 chord in A minor. And if you look at the chart, it's going to have that B minor 7 flat 5, and then it's followed by an E7 flat 9 chord and goes to A minor. So although A minor is the relative key of C major, we're definitely doing a key change here. We're using that B minor 7 flat 5 chord to pivot to the key of A minor. That E7 flat 9 is coming from like harmonic minor. If you harmonic minor in this key, has a G sharp, and that turns that what would usually be an E minor chord into an E dominant chord, right? And so, but we want that strong cadence. Thanks, Dr. Hinkle. So anyways, that's what we have to deal with first, and that repeats, okay? And then after it repeats, we get that same 2-5-1 in A minor again, right? And then we get a 2-5-1, no 4 chord this time, in C. And then we get the 2-5-1 in A minor again. And then it has a little interesting thing that happens. And if you don't have good, theory smarts, it might be a little confusing. But that A minor turns into a 2 chord, which would usually go to a 5 chord, right? D7, A minor, D7. And then it would go to 2, possibly the 5 chord in the key of C, G7. But it doesn't. It goes to G minor. Why is that? Because when we turn that G minor into 2 chord, it would go to a C7 chord, which would go to the F chord, which is the 4 chord again. It's a little cycle that brings us back to the 4 chord. But in this case, the composer didn't go A minor 7, D7, G minor 7, C7 to F. He used, for those dominant chords, remember the D7 and the C7, he uses what we call a flat 5 substitution, or sometimes we call it a tritone substitution. It's the same thing. And what that means is there's a dominant chord, a tritone, a flat 5th above the dominant chord that we replace it with. And that creates a nice chromatic movement downward. I don't want to get into all that's from melodic minor and it creates an altered sound. We don't want to get into any of that. It's just too much to talk about right now. Maybe at another time we could discuss that a little bit. Okay, so it goes A minor, A flat 7, G minor, G flat 7, which goes down, it's going in half steps. It takes you right down to the 4 chord. It's beautiful. And then it goes down another half step to the 5 chord of A minor again. So, as simple as it is, it's ingenious, right, this song. And it doesn't have a lot of key changes, and which makes it easy for us, right? Now, I'm going to move on to some of the licks that I played in the video. Now, as I said, this was very spontaneous. So it's not like Lick of the Day where I actually thought out a lick that I wanted to show everybody. I just played the best that I could and played a little solo. And so I think maybe I could show you some of the licks that I played. I had to relearn them because it's all spontaneous. I can't play the same thing twice ever. But what I wanted to do is really for you to learn the concepts. And the concepts is the important part. And we want you to be able to study and practice on your own. So when I practiced these songs when I was growing up, because remember I came from a blues and a rock background, this wasn't really natural for me. What I did is I would just take little sections and I would record myself playing the chords, and then I would practice to the little, like a loop of the sections that I wanted to work on, right? So first thing we're going to take is that 2-5-1 in C, which is what it starts with, right? Actually, it goes it goes 2-5-1 and then 4, but we're not going to do the 4 chord because that 4 chord is part of the same key, so it's not really that important. I mean, you can just keep playing C major on that 4 chord too, because it's all diatonic to the key. So anyways, we're going to look at the 2-5. Now, there's different ways you can approach this. And like I always, jazz guys will always complain one way or another. No, it's got to be this or it's got to be that, or, you have to, it has to be more chord tones. Oh, none of that altered stuff, or, jazz musicians always have tons of different opinions, and you just don't worry about it. Ignore or listen to what they say, but play it how you see fit, right? So I tend to try to play these songs every way that I know, And so first we're going to look at that. And now it's in C major, right? So you could play C major over that whole thing, but it might not really sound much like jazz. But that's okay. But it might not really sound that jazzy. So I'm going to show you like some different things. So look, in a 2-5-1, we often take that 5 chord, and the guy who's playing the chords puts altered extensions on it, and it creates enough tension that it sort of propels that chord forward to where it was going to resolve to. Cadence. We strengthen the cadence by adding altered extensions. Now those extensions with the dominant chord are going to be like flat 9 or sharp 9 or flat 5 or sharp 5 or any combination of those. There's other altered type scales that come from, altered type chords that come from different scales too. Like a 13 flat 9 or a 13 sharp 9 from the half whole diminished scale. There's different ones, but I'm just thinking altered scale for this example, and that means the chord could have a flat 5 or a sharp 5 or a flat 9 or a sharp 9. But even if the guy playing the chord does not put those in there, it doesn't matter. You can do it too. I think most jazz musicians would go, they don't really worry so much about how that chord is played. If they want to make tension, they create it with the line, and that's good enough, and it sounds fine over it. So in this case, the chord doesn't have any tension in it, but I don't care. I'm going to add the tension by using the altered scale. Okay, so the lick that I played just went like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So the first part is just from C major over the chord, right? And then for the G7 chord, I'm going to go. And that's the 5th of the C. But you should practice as many ways as possible and try to land on a chord tone, especially on the 1 chord. With the dominant chord, you can really start anywhere, all right? But when it resolves, you want it to resolve to something with a lot of what I call musical gravity. Okay, so let me play a track here. I'm going to play this lick as close as I can get it. And I'll play some different kinds of licks using the same technique. Dorian scale, which is C major over the 2 chord. Altered scale over the 5 chord. And a chord tone on the 1 chord. All right. Okay, so that's one technique or one approach, right? Dorian scale, altered scale, C major scale, right? So tell me what you think about that. One other thing that you can do, though, and I'll play this for you, is that you don't have to play C major on that one chord. You can play C Lydian, right? That would be G major. And most likely I would do that. If that 4 chord shows up as it does in the beginning of the song, then I want to stick to C major because I just want to. But if I only have the 2, 5, and the 1, like in this case, what we're playing over, the C major is for 2 measures, I can play C Lydian. So let's just listen to that and see if we like it, okay? How was that? Did that sound good? All right, so that's more like of a modal approach. Now remember, some jazz guys go, oh, you don't want to play modal approaches on this kind of music. That's not what, don't worry. Okay, so now we're getting more into the traditional realm of jazz. This is another way to play over that 2/5. If you've been following the licks of the days, I've been playing Barry Harris's chromatic scale. This is based off the major scale. Remember, we're in C major. And how it works is that, you might want to go back and check those lessons. In the major scale that you're using, if you have a whole step, you put a chromatic between them. Right? The scale looks like this, right? Right? So let's start from the G, for example. It doesn't matter where you start. This is a great place to think about this because between the G and the F note, there's a whole step in between. So we put a chromatic note in there. Now between the F and the E, there's only a half step. So you backtrack. So you go like this. And this is the sound of the scale. Right? So this is a great sound. The reason it works is because when you go by these guidelines, it throws all the scale tones on downbeats is where you want them, and all the chromatic notes on the upbeats. And that's why it works out perfectly. It allows the listener to still hear C major with chromaticism, right? So you got to go by the guidelines. Chromatic note between 2 notes a whole step apart. If there's only a half step, you backtrack to the note before and then play that note and continue on using the same rules. Okay, so let's do that. The lick goes like this. But I did something that I didn't really expect. Because it's spontaneous. Instead of going like this, I went like this. Okay, so let's listen to that a little bit, okay? So I played a few different examples. Now with this scale, there's other things you can do too. And this, you know, if you're new to this Barry Harris scale, there's a lot of practice involved, but at one point it becomes natural. Is it completely natural for me? It certainly isn't, because I'm new at it. You know, it's something I discovered, and I'm always discovering new stuff too, as old as I am. But you can put little chord bits in there, little arpeggio chord tone bits. I could go, but instead of continuing down the scale, this is E, right? What's the diatonic arpeggio in this key? Well, that would be the 3 chord, the E minor chord. So I could go, that's E, G, B, D. And then continue on going down the scale or something. Let's see what that sounds like, okay? Right, so there's different things you can do, and this is really like traditional jazz language. So I suggest you work on this a lot too. Go back to the other lessons. I promised a workbook on Barry Harris's chromatic scale, and that's coming. So keep paying attention to the lessons. Next thing, now this is like a cool idea, because we're guitar players, right? So we like pentatonic scales. I only played the G minor pentatonic scale for like the first 3 or 4 years of my guitar playing. You know? That's all I did. So I want to be able to use that too in the blues, and in jazz, and you can. So the rule here is, I'm going to explain it as simple as possible. If you want to get into the weeds, you're going to have to go to Patreon or something. But count up a fifth from the 2 chord, up a fifth from the 2 chord, D minor 7, right? D, E, F, G, A. Play an A minor pentatonic scale over that chord. And then go up in half steps for each of the chords. And what happens is that you should look at the scale and see what the extensions are. So when you play D minor 7 A minor pentatonic scale over the D minor 7 chord, you get some of the upper extensions of the chord. But when you remember, we go up a half step for the G7 chord. What happens there is it's all the altered extensions. It's both the flat and sharp 5th and the flat and sharp 9th, plus the flat 7. So it's like the perfect altered sound when you do it that way. And then if you keep going up a half step from that for the 1 chord, so you went A, B flat, and B. Like, it seems weird, right? How could you play B minor pentatonic scale over a C major chord? But it sounds great. It's like a Lydian sound. So that's what I did here. And how's this lick go? I'm looking at it here and trying to read my own lick because I don't really know what I do. So it goes 1. Okay, so I'm gonna play this for you, okay? Now I'm gonna play the lick over the progression, over the 2-5-1, and then I'm gonna, improvise using just the same concept, right? Minor pentatonic scales up in half steps, okay? right, so how did that sound? That's like a good sound, right? I think that's a very interesting way that you really wouldn't hear a lot of musicians do. Okay, so next up, we're going to change to the B minor 7 flat 5, E7 flat 9, A minor 7. Now, we're in minor, okay? So that B minor 7 flat 5 chord, you could keep playing C major scale right there. There's other scales you can use too. There's melodic minor scales you can use. You could use on the B Locrian sharp 2 scale. But I would do that from time to time. I did not do this on the video. It just didn't dawn on me, or I wasn't inspired to do that. So I mostly just played chord tones here. It's a B, a D, an F, and an A, and that's all it is, right? So I use pieces of, the arpeggio. And then for the E7 flat 9, I use E altered, which is F melodic minor. It's a sound that I'm familiar with and I like. And for the A minor chord, sometimes I'll just play blues there, right? That works perfectly fine. And sometimes I'll play a Dorian there. So the lick that I have, now, the rhythm is a little floaty when I listen to me play. It's something I need to work on. My rhythm is not that tight. I float around a little bit. I tend to land in the right places, but sometimes when I get there, there's a little bit of waves of rhythm. Flams. Drummers call them, I'm flamming. So keep that in mind. So what did I play here? Let's see. That's just the root in the flat 7 of that chord. And then I go 1. That's what I play. I don't know what I played, so I had to read it here. So I went like this. Okay, so that altered scale I play a lick that goes like this. Okay, and then so that's what I do there. Now, I'll do the same thing. I'll play that lick the best that I can, and then I'll improvise just using the same concept or approach, okay? And we'll see how that works out. Okay, so those are some ideas that you can try out, right? Remember, there's the diagrams for you if you need the PDF. So next, the only other thing that you have to worry about in this song is the A minor, A flat 7, G minor, G flat 7, F major 7. Don't try to think about this too much. This is like a medium tempo. There's different things you could do, but there's no shame in playing chord tones. And, you know, if you have the chord tones under your fingers, you can approach the chord tones chromatically. There's tons of different ways that you can do this. But I didn't really think about it too much. I just played basically the chord tones, but it sounds musical. You know, if I have to speak for myself, it sounds musical because I don't just go 1 3 5 7 1 3 5 7 1 3 5 7 1 3 5 7. I do like little pieces of it. So what did I play here? I went like this. Well, what is that? That's 1 3 and 5. Root. And then for the G minor 7, I play a triplet this time. Root. And then for the F major, I just play the arpeggio. I went, what did I play here? I went. I'll just play chord tones. I'll do this lick the best that I can, and then I'll play different chord tones for you. All right, so these are all the little parts that you need to learn to play this song. So check out the demo in its entirety. For the PDF, I put the actual seconds where I played those licks. So if you want to look at it that way, you can do that. All right, so it's sort of, if you're not into jazz or this is a new thing, it's sort of a long process, but I suggest you do it song by song. And then you work on, like, you know, the parts. So a lot of 2-5-1s and, you know, a lot of, for this kind of song, 2-5-1 4s and minor 2-5s. And then these become a lot easier. Okay, so have a nice day and, you know, work on this and let me know how it goes. All right, so have a nice day. Goodbye.